Well, I appreciate our esteemed guest. He is retired 30-plus year professor, University of Connecticut. He's written quite a few scholarly works on the environment, a primer on CO2 and climate, the solar fraud, and other publications. You can find out more by going to Amazon.com. His name is Howard C. Hayden. Professor, Dr. Hayden, I kind of got caught short there on the break. The point I was trying to make was this. And I'm just reading the scholarly reports and seeing the news reports about it, so I'm a layman, so correct me. But say they'll have an ocean rising model, and then they won't even feed in all these other things like the sun and even major weather patterns. They'll just feed in a basic equation of what will happen if, CO2 is released, and then they have it already built in the computer that CO2 will supposedly have enough of a climate driver to heat things up to make the ice caps melt, and then we're going to be flooded. That's an oversimplification, or can you break down how they build these models to show this disaster?
Well, one thing is they confuse the North Pole and the South Pole. The thing that determines conditions at the North Pole is primarily ocean currents. For example, there was a recent warming, and a whole lot of ice just left in the Arctic Sea, and then ocean currents changed, and right away it came back. It was the fastest rise known, but the records are short. It only goes back to 1979. South Pole, let me give you the ski report from the South Pole. Maybe you have some skiers down there in Texas. The ski report is 0.2 of an inch of new snow and 2 miles of base. And the highest temperature ever recorded down there is 7 degrees at the South Pole Research Station. The lowest temperature is 117 below. Now, the last I checked, the melting point of ice hasn't changed. And so just exactly how does one presume that the South Pole is going to melt? I mean, for heaven's sake.
Well, also, they do real base things, like they will show polar bears on an ice floe and say, oh, look, they're all going to drown. They don't have a habitat anymore. But just watching shows about polar bears and reading a few books to my kids over the years, I know that they'll swim 100 miles. They get out on those floes and hunt beluga and hunt seals. But the news said they can't swim, they're dead, global warming did this. And I remember reading adventure books, history books about people, investigating the South and North Pole, the Strait of Magellan, hundreds of years ago, and how there were always giant icebergs the size of cities breaking off. I mean, that's what they do. It rains, it puts more onto the glaciers, then they go out to the sea and break off. But I guess polar bears can't swim, and glaciers have never had icebergs.
Yeah, right. Well, let me say something about the bears. They have survived actually very well. And, for example, the polar bears go back a long, long time, about 120,000 years ago or something like that. There was another interglacial, and it was a good deal warmer than it is today. And there was hardly any ice up anywhere around the North Pole, and the polar bears survived that perfectly well at that time. I don't understand why they wouldn't survive it now. And in fact, the polar bear populations are not decreasing. I think there's one, call it tribe of them, that's seen some decrease, but overall the total polar bear population has been either holding steady or slightly increasing.
Yeah, I saw a press report that they're coming further south and that their numbers are higher. I think it said 25,000 or something.
Yeah, something like that. There's quite a number of them. And
but I mean, it's this type of mindless hype. Now, since you really study what's happening with the sun, and I see so different, all these different reports, but I remember 5-6 years ago seeing NASA reports about, look, we can see this moon's liquid sea of methane is melting due to the sun's increased output. Can you specifically get into the sun as a driver, or is it the main driver, and what we've seen in the solar system? And is the sun now cooling, according to your studies, as NASA says it is?
Yes, the sun is now cooling, and the past 60 years have shown the highest solar activity in the last 1,400 years. So yes, the sun is now cooling and has been warmer, and we can expect some cooling. But there's also some change in the ocean currents that's periodic, so that there is expected to be some cooling within the next decade or so. And the temperature history also shows that since January 2001, the temperature of the Earth has basically held almost flat. It's rising at a 50th of a degree Celsius per decade at the present time. Now that's just a trend. You can't really predict from trends. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the previous predictions about the horrendous warming that people expected have not come to pass.
It seemed like they were trying to hedge their bet in that Day After Tomorrow propaganda film, where they explained that global warming means instant freezing and the destruction of New York by ice. And so now they're falling back to that, saying, yes, it's the global warming. Now we're all going to freeze to death. I'm sure you've heard that newest thing.
Yeah, I have. The problem with that business is that when you predict everything, you predict nothing. You just write down a list of things that could happen. That's not a prediction. And so it's just pure garbage. No reason to believe any of it.
You talked about the majority of real scientists don't agree with them. There's been a big controversy. They had 1,800 people sign on, as you know, I'm telling the audience, this UN document a year or so ago, a year and a half ago, and now it's come out that a lot of them were just invited to the conference, never even signed on, but then saw their names, and then they cult-like say, there's no disagreement, it's 100%, all scientists agree, which kind of backfired on them, because then they're coming out of the woodwork saying, I don't agree. I mean, again, this is bizarre. Can you speak to the real numbers?
Yeah, there were something like 2,500 people who attended the IPCC gathering in Maui. Now, understand what IPCC stands for. It's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And as it turned out, there's only about 52 climate scientists among the whole lot. And they, among themselves, were, in considerable disagreement about things. And I know of at least one who sued to have his name taken off that list of people that signed. But there's quite another thing that's gone on independently. There's a petition that was run out of Oregon, and there were 19,000 scientists who signed a statement saying that the global warming is certainly not proven, and the science isn't up to it. It's not time to panic. And there's another petition that I only know about sort of through back channels that has something like 29,000 signatures on it, where people disagree with the IPCC scenario.